So I've set like a little bit of a challenge to myself here. So I've done no prep, no slides, no notes. I just want to put forward like an idea that it's not original. It's not. I'm sure it's not my own. It's something that's sort of come to me naturally through conversations with others. But I want this to be kind of interactive. I know that the nature of these isn't really meant to be interactive, but I'm hoping that people ask questions through. So I don't know whether that's flying in the face of this format, but so it's the talk is tentatively titled "Questioning the traditional role of a tester in an agile team." So this sort of notion sort of been something that me and a couple of others have been thinking about for the last, I don't know, couple of months, and more intensely the last sort of period of time since we've transitioned to the world of Expedia. So I guess this is, the idea is that the traditional role of a tester is viewed as like a stage in the pipeline. You know, even with TDD, where you write your tests first, there's still a concept of doing some testing further down the pipeline. So you might do your development work, and then it's generally acknowledged at some point that you're going to hand it to a tester, and the tester's going to do their piece, and then you're going to say it's okay, and they're going to progress it down the pipeline. So the idea is that as we become more mature about what we do and more disciplined, that the role of the tester might become blurred from someone who purely focuses on writing tests and purely focused on writing tests at one layer specifically. So that's something we've seen quite a lot, where they're writing tests at like the functional layer or the acceptance test layer, to transitioning to a role where they're more of a test consultant. So they're someone who is owning the quality of the tests, and this is what motivates them. This is what they think about. They're thinking about improving the quality, maintaining quality. But it's not limiting their role to writing tests. So the idea is that in this ideal world, that the tester would be maybe a bit like an architect, where they play a consultative role, where they have the experience and the expertise in knowing what a good test looks like and knowing where the value is in having the test. So whether it's it's best served at an acceptance test layer, where you're running an automated test against a fully deployed app in an integration environment, or it might be a manual test that that has to be done, just can't be automated, or whether it's right down at the unit level. So I guess it probably helps to spell out like a bit of an ideal scenario with development. So I guess when you pick up a story, we can still do the traditional kickoff that we do right now, where you have a developer, a tester, and a TPM get together and you talk about the requirements of the story. But I guess the tester will not be purely focused on writing the test, but helping inform what test should be written. So the developer and the tester and the TPM will talk about what needs to be done, and probably the tester is thinking most strongly about what tests are going to need to be written to be sufficient to progress this feature through. But they can communicate the high-level requirements as well. The developer can go away and, if they're doing TDD, great, then they can start to use the tests that they've already talked about to inform the development. But then when we do like a sort of handover, so development work's done, then the tester might be able to, review the tests at every layer. So rather than just focusing, in the traditional model that we've used before, rather than just focusing on tests at one level, they're going to think more about where the tests are and whether they're at the right level. So for instance, we know that it's really expensive to have a test at the acceptance test layer, because often the app needs to be deployed. So they're going to be thinking, what's the most efficient way to get the satisfactory level of coverage for for this feature. So they'll be looking at unit tests. So the role of the tester is changing because they're becoming more technical. But they're not responsible purely for writing the test. So developers and development teams are still writing the tests, but I guess the expectation might shift, so that the tester is thinking, I need to be able to check out this code, I need to be able to run the unit tests, I need to be able to contribute to them at some level, and that might just be copying and pasting, changing some inputs, and verifying that it passes and fails in line with my expectations. So the side effect of this is that it places a subtle pressure on the development teams to come up with a better framework for their tests. So they're thinking more clearly about using, a ubiquitous language around what they're working on. So, rather than having concepts in the code that stay with the code, things I'm talking about are like, what if was guilty of having like property, inventory item, hotel. I think there's probably a couple of other names, all for the same thing. So coming up with a single language, I think, is a nice side effect of that, because the testers are actually using it as well. But it also encourages the team to think better about how they're building this testing framework. It needs to be really simple in that it clearly expresses the intent of the test, because all of a sudden you're not writing the test for your own benefit, you're writing it for the benefit of someone else reading. So you're thinking more about readability and how you're expressing what is actually being tested. Because you know that someone else is going to come in and have a look at it and go, oh, is this doing what I think it's going to do? So that's one nice side effect. The second side effect, and I think is really important and something that we really lacked at What If, is that all of a sudden the tester starts to have confidence in the tests at a lower level. So they feel less inclined that they need to spend more time doing more expensive, manual testing, or writing tests at a different layer, which would be better, serviced at a lower, sort of more cheaper level. So all of a sudden they have this sort of more intimate understanding. And I probably think it's a nice way to be introduced to programming as well, because it's using sort of constructs and probably paradigms that the tester would be familiar with, and because it's you're doing it a feature at a time. Like we might be working on GST calculations, so it's important to understand how the GST is put together. The tester probably understands at a high level, but when they start to see how it's implemented in the code, then I think it's a more natural transition into understanding programming and how they go about it. So, where am I going with this? I guess, Scott, yes,
You are
help me out.
encouraging questions. So with that idea of introduction to programming, is it far enough to say that they just write tests? Could it go further than that? Could
No,
they actually
yes, that's where this is going. Thank you. That wasn't a baited question, but that's exactly where this is going. So the EPC mobile team are actually, these guys are on board with this. We were talking about it earlier today. They talk about it a lot and think about it a lot. So we were saying, in the ideal situation, you get to the point where the tester is still the expert in testing, and maybe the developers are bringing their own set of experiences. We've got Android guys, we've got iOS guys. People all have varied experience, but they can contribute at any level. Once you have the familiarity in writing, basic unit tests, it quickly transitions to be able to, contribute to the code. You can see a typo here. You might be able to pick up basic features, bugs, that sort of stuff, and start contributing. You still have the support of the rest of the team around you, but you begin to feel more confident doing those things. And vice versa as well, because often we see that there's a bottleneck with testing. So there's a whole bunch of development work that's stacked up on the tester, and you've got to crunch to get it through. So if you have the guidance of a good tester who's focused on the quality, then you can begin to contribute as a developer and go, oh, okay, well, I understand that the framework they've set up here. I know that the types of tests we can have at each layer, so it becomes easier to contribute on that level. So it's completely foreseeable to see a tester ship a feature without involving a developer, and a developer shipping a feature without involving a tester. That one happens all the time. More often than we like, but at least it's happening with the right guidance.
On that point, the idea of a developer shipping a feature without involvement of a tester, you're saying because the developer has written the code and either the same or another developer has written the tests?
Yeah, exactly. So they're two different roles to fill, but they can be done by the same person.
So if the tester still has the role of being responsible for the QA and the quality control, is there not the argument that they should still have the final review, or at least be aware of it, or
maybe?
Yes or no?
But I think you can reach that level of maturity where you there's that level of trust in the team, and that you may have seen that that sort of change go out 100 times before, and you know that there's a really adequate level of tests around that for you to introduce something new is not going to be require a change to the way the tests operate.
Sure. So at least the tester should be advised.
Yeah.
We're releasing this. I'll put my argument forward, I don't think it needs testing because we've done that before, blah, 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 and the tester goes, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so you're calling on the
Not
tester.
without knowledge, I guess, is my idea.
Yeah, to leverage their expertise. So if you're running into an area that you feel uncomfortable or uncertain about, then sure, you can go ahead and write the test, but then you probably engage the tester and say, hey, this is, I've modified the test framework to support, this type of calculation or to do this particular thing, and so then the tester will come in and go, oh, okay, well, that's more or less in line with, how we're heading at the moment, so I'm cool for it to go out.
Yep.
Or I feel totally confident in what I'm doing, I'm happy to push it out without.
I was going to say, so it's more, to follow up with that, the idea is sort of more, not the tester has to have approval over all the tests going out, but at least when you're getting your team, ramping up your team on, getting this environment going, they're sort of more of a consultant role where you might consult with the tester because that is their area of expertise for at least until you get used to what we're going to test, what we're comfortable not testing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in the same way that you'd engage an architect.
I think this comes down to trusting the team, and this is a team thing. And what we've done is, as a starting point, we've built some rules that we come up with together as a team. Hopefully, be a safety net that we will not ship code that isn't tested, right? And our testers helped us come up with some of those rules, so that if a couple of other people are looking at the things you're doing, then you should be confident to ship it. So I had a question that's leading from that. It's the same one you want to ask. So in an ideal world, shouldn't everyone be developers and testers at the same time?
Maybe at some level, but yeah, I really think the analogy is the same as you would engage an architect. Can a developer go and design, like some crazy multi-system architecture? Of course they can. If that's not their area of expertise, would they be better served getting the input of an architect? Of course. So I think the same goes with the tester. So yeah, I think in short, ultimately you can be doing both. And I think it depends on where you want to add value, right? So the tester might be seeing stories to pick up in the backlog and going, yeah, I could do that. But, given that I have a lot of experience in this area here, there's other opportunities for me to add value. So sure.
So that's an interesting point about what you just said. Some area of expertise, and they're better off deferring potentially to an architect. Where do you draw that line in terms of testing and architecture? How do you define the expertise to say, at this point, I'm not allowed to potentially do this, or I shouldn't be doing this?
I think it's a call you make yourself, right? I think if you're self-aware, then, generally, I think when you reach a certain level of discipline, people who are good at what they do always seek peer feedback. Anyway. So there are some things you might be confident and comfortable doing without seeking feedback. It's so routine and rote that you just do it. You need to ask.
So follow-up question to that, in terms of seeking that feedback, is it important to have a title or a position for someone to seek that feedback from, or is it important to have someone that has that role within the team?
Yeah, I don't think the title is important at all. I think it's just generally acknowledged. So you might have someone with, a heap of testing expertise who, is a developer. Vice versa. It's not unforeseeable, to have a developer with a heap of development experience who knows a heap about, some particular domain, but they just happen, their role or their title is a tester.
So why are you talking about the role of the tester changing when it's really more than the role? It's testing and quality changing, not the role of the tester.
Because I didn't do any preparation.
I'd argue it's more about
It's
experience, isn't it? This is something that we, if you have a heap of experience in low-level memory management, then as long as the team understands where everyone's experience lies, they can, it's in the team's best interest that we talk to people who have are really well-rounded in that area. And I think testing is a specific discipline where that can be applied.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it could be like, I have a lot of experience in Android, but if someone said, hey, go and spin up these views in iOS, to be honest, it would be the first place to start. So I would go and look at, talk to someone. Instead of having silos, it's the idea that you can defer your questions to someone with that expertise, encouraging that.
But yeah, I think that the point that Danny makes, and it's not just about the tester, it's the whole team, right? The whole team has to change. There needs to be that level of discipline and maturity to to recognise that. And there's a common theme there, by the way. Some of the other things that we've been talking about, we just come from a Kanban session. We're talking about Kanban. We're saying how, like, Kanban seems like it's a progression of like maturity and discipline. If you take away some of like the constructs that are put in place to help you be agile when you reach a certain level of discipline, because you realise that there are rules to be broken. So the reason that a testing title exists is because at some point, people probably went, the code you were shipping out is crap. So, we need to have a title of a tester to start testing things. Yeah, Jack.
So in terms of launching team, with regards to expanding the team moving forward, do you think you'd ever advertise for a tester, specifically as a position?
Yeah, I think if there's a need there, absolutely. So, like, if we, I don't know, yeah, I think so. It's difficult to predict the future, but maybe we move to this model and where everyone we have here is so disciplined at writing really good quality tests, and we may grow our own talent, so we don't need someone who's purely focused on that anymore. It's just something we do naturally, maybe. But
So,
I'm really glad that we have 3 of them right now. If that, yeah.
How do you then do that with a brand new team? And I'm asking because the last 3 brand new team sort of spin-up investment cases I've put together have been for teams of like 12 engineers, and nobody called a tester. Nobody even specifically called like a software dev engineer in test, just engineers. So when you're trying to create a brand new team, but you have this philosophy that everybody can write code and test each other's code, and the team has each other's back, and you're all going to ship quality.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of inject that?
Can I say don't build a new team? Just, is that an option? Like, it's a hypothetical situation. Like, build a new team the team is new, but the people on it aren't new. So you might have, like, 50% of them are already, part of this culture and already live and breathe it and are committed to it. And, other people are being onboarded and ready to embrace this type of.
Or if you're talking about hiring new people, would it not be just part of the job description, but that's that testing experience is a requirement?
Yeah, it's more of a, like, to me, it's like a behavioural and like a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking, Pete,
Yeah.
because it did seem like that would, it seems to be something that a team can grow into, this level of maturity. And I've kind of done both, right, where you get, 5 or 6 people that have lots of experience doing different stuff, and they've come from similar cultures, and together might be a new team, but, they've got sort of mature work practices and stuff. But sometimes you're trying to spin up, a team in a brand new place where
Everyone is.
nobody knows anybody, and yeah, you make it part of a job description that everybody kind of has this, but they have no idea how they work together, or how to trust each other, or whether or not they can actually achieve the level of quality they could without the gatekeeper.
No, in that case, I think you'd say, get the person with the title, with the role, put the constructs in place to support it, and then try and transition toward it.
I think what you can do is to set up the framework, right? What you can do is get a new team, but you educate them on the framework that you're setting for them to play around in, right? And those ideologies should have some of these ideas ingrained in it. And I don't know if XP are meant to do it or not, but like the things we test and learn is exactly that. You kind of drawn the box saying, okay, this is your area to play around with, now go play. And all the conversations, all the things we do kind of revolve around that. Maybe that's the right way to start a new team, where you set up the boundaries and the framework, and then they can use that as guidance.
But a tougher question, why stop at testing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's sort of what Danny was looking at, why just testing.
Okay, is there a need for a role definition for a TPM? Can they write code? Can they write testing? Can they write specs for testing?
Pay somebody.
Yeah. I think we're out of time, but we're using use that question.
Whole executive
I don't want to answer that. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I should say that I don't think that idea is totally sound. I just think it's worth talking about.